What's up, Hyperfast Nation? On this episode of the show, we are taking a look at the 4 C's that determine pricing. This framework will help you educate your clients and get them to think about how to write offers that will win and get them the best price. You don't want to miss this episode. All right, on the last episode, we talked about the 12-step framework that you should present to your buyer clients up front, educate them on the offer process and things to think about other than price. And these are, these were all terms and conditions of the offer that will help them get the best possible price. Sometimes it'll help them win out in competitive offer situations or bidding wars without being the highest offer price-wise. And it's a process that we've proved with thousands and thousands of buyers taught to agents all over the country. So if you have not seen that episode, go back, listen to that one. Today is a simpler framework, right? So that 12-step framework is one that Carrie came up with over 12 years ago, maybe over 14 years ago now. The 4 C's that determine pricing it's just a simpler framework. It includes everything that would be covered in that 12 steps. That 12-step framework is just a simpler way of looking at it. And for some of you, this may be a way that you want to present it to your buyers, because it's 4, not 12. It's just a little simpler, and some may prefer it. So without further ado, we will begin. The first C is cash. All right. So cash can come in 2 forms when it comes to an offer, right? Cash can be part of the EMD, the consideration there, like how big do you make that earnest money deposit? Remember from the previous episode, the bigger that deposit, the more secure feeling the seller has, and the more likely you are to win an offer or get better terms. So the EMD and then the down payment, right? A bigger down payment, again, decreases risk or perceived risk to the seller, so it's going to increase the benefit and the terms that the buyer is able to negotiate. All right, so that's the first C. The second C is closing time frame, right? And we also roll occupancy into that. So closing, when are you going to close? Right, the more aligned that is with what the seller wants, the better the terms you're going to get, the better the price you're going to get. Right? Always prepare your buyers up front to be able to close quickly, because most sellers are going to prefer quicker closes. However, there are some, right, downsizers that are still picking out their new place, people waiting on new construction, people that haven't picked out their next place, whatever, right? There's some people that want longer closes, 60 days, 90 days. So the more flexible you are, the better you'll be able to get. Along with closing time comes occupancy, right? So just because you close on it doesn't mean you're going to occupy it right away. You may get better terms if the seller needs a rent back period for whatever reason, a post-settlement occupancy, right? So these are just all things to educate your buyer clients up front. The third C, right? The third C is contingencies. In the last framework, 12-step framework, we kind of went over different contingencies: appraisal, financing, home inspection. Well, we just kind of lump them all up in one. And in this framework, right, when you're explaining it to your buyer clients, and the general concept is the more contingencies you put in, the more generous those contingency terms are towards the buyer, well, the less certainty the seller has. So if you decrease seller certainty because you have a home inspection contingency, because you have an appraisal contingency, because you have a financing contingency, or God forbid you have a home of sale contingency, right? The more of those you put in, there's more risk, less certainty for the seller. So guess what? Your offer looks worse. So if you're competing, you're going to have to be the highest, right? If you're loaded up with contingencies, and if you're negotiating in just a normal situation, you're going to have to go max out on price, because you're not giving the seller much of anything else. All right. So those are the first 3, right? Those are all things that the seller or the buyer really gets to decide, right? Closing time, cash, contingencies. These are all things that the buyer can control and use to make the offer better. The 4th C is competition. Okay. What is the competitive landscape in the market, right? And this is something that as a buyer agent, right, you have a chance to really insert value here, okay? Because for the most part, competition is determined by the inventory, number of buyers, absorption rate, right? How many months supply is on the market? Anything that's 3 or months is considered a seller's market. Anything above that, but less than like 5 or 6 is a neutral market, and 6 or more, it's a buyer's market. For the most of the landscape of the last decade or so, we've been in a market that's more favorable for sellers. So, again, it all depends on your area, zip code, street, right? It's very, very hyper local. And you're gonna have a certain landscape that you're dealing with. You can bend the odds in your favor, though. How do you do that? Well, go find off-market deals, right? There's less competition for off-market deals. So if you know your buyer's looking for, this type of house in this type of neighborhood and this type of price range, well, pull tax records, look at landlords, especially absentee ones or ones that are not local and ones that have vacancies, and do your old door knocking, letter dropping, prospecting, marketing, network with other agents, right? Do all of that, and try to find some off-market inventory. These are all things that you need to present to your buyer up front. I think you should walk through the 12-step framework or the 4 C's. You can kind of pick how you want to present. They're both 2 different ways of really accomplishing the same thing. But the more you present value, present your process, the better you'll get at not only showing your value up front and getting commitment from the buyer, justifying your fees, but the better educated your buyer will be, so that they will have clarity on what the offer process is and the decisions that they need to make. So, the last thing you want is they find the perfect home, and then now you're explaining contingencies and why it's, the pros and cons of having them versus not, and pre-approvals and all of that. So do the work up front with the buyer. It's going to make it better for you and them and everyone involved. Hope you got a ton of value out of this podcast. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking about why you need to think like a listing agent now, right? This is in the post-NAR settlement environment we're in. I think it is important to think more like a listing agent. Obviously, nothing's changed where where it doesn't make a ton of sense to go out and get a lot of listings, right? There's always been an advantage, I think, to agents that can be good listing agents, and that's true, yesterday, today, tomorrow. But just in terms of how you actually talk to your buyers, you want to think like a listing agent. I'm going to get into that more in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. Please make sure you share this episode with other people that you think could benefit. Leave us a comment if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on iTunes, we love iTunes reviews. Helps us create better content, get more guests on here, because we do, a lot of our podcast episodes are other real estate agents, coaches, team leaders, influencers in the industry. So please leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.